with your backbone straight, neck straight. Easy and comfortable sitting position. With your eyes closed. With concentration fully focused on your breathing. Observing in breath as it comes in, out breath as it goes out, mindfully, mindfully. Sustain the continuity of your awareness, awareness of breathing. Sustained awareness of your breathing. Sitting motionlessly, just no movement on the body. Only the observation of your breathing as it comes in, as it goes out. Focus on this small triangle area above your upper lip at the entrance of your nose, inside the walls of your nose. Just this small triangle area. Observe the flow of your respiration. Natural normal breathing. Natural normal breathing. You will realize your mind wanders away very often, agitated when thinking something. Quickly bring your attention, concentration back to your breathing as quickly as possible. As much as possible, focus single pointedly on the awareness of your breathing. No thinking for a while, just observing, observing. Let there be no reaction of frustration, disappointment. When your mind wanders away, just simply become aware of the wandering. Recognize the wandering mind. And with no sense of disappointment, frustration, return back to your breathing. Okay,
Thank you. Thank you for coming, making your time available. And I think this week we have in our reading selections some. So we're going to make quite a jump. That's the plan, and hopefully we may have most of the chapters or at least done before the end of the year. Let's see. Okay, so chapter 9, I'm going to share you the text. Oh, sorry, Lindy, before I go, any announcements or anything like that?
Not really, just a continuing thanks, Sonam, for you joining us, for making the opportunity available for us to join you for this monthly study group. No, not any other announcements. So thank you.
Thank you for organizing, and thank you everyone for coming up, as I said. Okay, so this week, at least, well, in this session, we will start from chapter 9, and chapter 9 is fairly, easygoing chapter because there's nothing much in there, except some prophecies. We'll just have quickly go through it, but there are some important prophecies too. Remember that. Of course, on the one hand, Lotus Sutra has so much of extremely rich content from so many different point of view. And turns out that most of the actually Mahayana belief systems, including the fact that Buddha was enlightened long time ago, and that actually makes in this Lotus Sutra makes very clear the idea that also that there is, of course, the most important idea is that there is only one yana, there is one vehicle, one tekpa. That is, in the end, of course, that's the most essential message of this sutra. And of course, you'll notice that because of this idea, Shravakas and Pratyek-Buddhas or Shravaka find it very hard to digest this sutra. Because Shravakas think that they are at least, have to have at least 3 yanas, has to, Pratyek Yana and Bodhisattva yana. And now, of course, this sutra is saying there's only one yana in the end. That is the ultimate intention of the Buddha. And everything else is just Buddha's skillful teaching for us to be led ultimately into Buddhahood by different means. So there are like transitional points, transitional stations or transitional points where we take certain rest, and then once we recuperate, get our energy back, then we want to keep moving. So we should not consider Pratyek Buddha and the Shravakayana as sort of a stopping final point. They are just a transitional stages on the path. In other words, put it in plain English, any other liberation that we think about, individual liberation, whether it's an individual liberation of Shravaka based on listening, hearing, studying Buddha's teaching, and individual liberation based on Pratyek Buddhayana, based on solitary retreat, solitary realization, and also liberation based on, you could say, Bodhisattvahood. These all are just, in the end, the means to the final end, which is Buddhayana. Okay? And that's, I think, the point is being made repeatedly, except in these few chapters. Now, in these few chapters, we've noticed that actually what Buddha is doing is Buddha basically, because, this is along the same line, making the same argument. There is only one vehicle, and even those people who actually committed Shravakas, committed Pratyek Buddhas, they will eventually become Buddha one day. And that's the prophecy, right? That's why the Buddha is making a lot of prophecies. And we saw in the previous chapter, chapter 8, thousands of Pratyek Buddhas, Bodhisattvas are prophesied to become Buddha. Now in chapter 9, you notice that Ananda Buddha's attendant for nearly 40 years, and Rahula, Buddha's son, because Buddha got only one son, Rahula They both prophesied to become Buddha eventually. And Rahula, remember, as far as we know, Rahula almost entered monastic institution when he was almost like 7. And Buddha gave a very interesting discourse to Rahula about Buddhist ethics. And Buddha basically says that Rahula, even when he was only 7 years, he didn't say, do this, don't do this. No, Buddha doesn't say, actually, give this kind of advice to Rahula. He says, Rahula, look at this mirror. He says, and then, of course, there are certain cases mirror and some cases as reflection. Just bring a bucket full of water or half full of water, and then Rahula sees his own reflection in there. And using this analogy, Buddha says, Rahula, this is exactly how you conduct yourself based on the reflection. Basically, you have to think hard, study hard, and through your own analysis, you have to come to terms with what is unwholesome, what is wholesome. Not because not based on certain scriptures or texts, but through your own reflection. And then he says, when you reflect an action, of course, as a meditator, you can very easily see whether hatred, for example, if you are really hateful at the moment, and if you sit and meditate, you just can feel the devastating effect of hate, anger when we're meditating. If you're not meditating, if you're extrovert and of course thinking about something else, then we really don't get time to see what is the actual effect, the impact, the negative impact on the sensation level, on the experiential level. Okay, so having said that, and then of course we hopefully my plan is to go quickly into chapter 10. Chapter 10 is nothing much. Basically, Buddha encourages Vaishyaraj, he's the Bodhisattva of medicine, and later on, of course, sometimes we call medicine king. Basically, Buddha announces or teaches that people who are going to look after the sutra will be well off, or eventually become enlightened just by taking care and studying about the Lotus Sutra. And people who don't pay respect and don't venerate Lotus Sutra will have very negative consequences of Dharma. And in chapter 11, there is an appearance of stupa, and there the important point for us is a new thing that Devdada appears. Very important. So Devdada, is the perhaps the exemplar evil person in Buddhist institution. Devdada was there always to harm Buddha. He was basically intending to kill Buddha in different ways, and he tried so many ways. And not only, of course, not only that he did that, but actually he split whole sangha. It was basically rival to Buddha, and that's not too bad. But actually, he split the sangha and he created his own monastic institution. Apparently, that lasted almost like around Shinzang's period, 5th century in India. Devdada's own institution. Remember, Buddha set up a Buddhist institution. And Devdada created his own institution in the name of Buddhism, because he fundamentally disagreed with Buddha's teaching. And that lasted for some time, for a long time. So, and here in this text, you'll notice that Devdada has been, Buddha prophesies that Devdada, not only that, in the past, Devdada was his teacher. And at a certain point, Devdada will become fully enlightened. And so that's an important, significant point we'll read. And then here in this chapter saying there's a daughter of Nagara. Now you might wonder, okay, what about all these male monastics become, Buddha prophesies male monastics become Buddha and Bodhisattva at a certain point. What about those, bhikkhunis? There are a lot of nuns in the Buddhist institution, Buddhist congregation. What about them? Of course, there's a natural question. Actually, Sutra does address that. And the first thing and important thing is in the chapter 11, you will notice that the Sagara, daughter of Sagara king, Sagar essentially means ocean. Naga means serpents. You generally consider them snakes. These snakes even though from a naive ordinary point of view, they just like ordinary reptiles, but that from the Buddhist mythology, Buddhist myth, and now of course not only ancient but also present day myth, there are good indication that these nagas actually, these snakes are, some of the snakes are extraordinarily brilliant. They come to where the Dharma centers are there. They listen. They come to listen to the teachings. They show up in the different ways. Okay. So anyway, this Naga daughter appears, and then she was being challenged, and because the question asked, "Is there anyone who actually understands Lotus Sutra?" And the answer was no. There was none. Yes, there is, but there is only one person, and that's the daughter of Naga king. But then, of course, Shariputra couldn't believe. How could she understand if something we don't understand, something bodhisattvas don't understand? So she was being challenged. And then basically she miraculously transformed her body into a bodhisattva, and then basically made her, literally manifested her enlightenment, full Buddhahood. So that's an interesting point that actually we could, and that happens in chapter 11. And chapter 12, hope is to go into chapter 12 as well. I'm sorry if you haven't read it, but this is an interesting chapter, actually following with the same footpath. And here in chapter 12, Buddha doesn't disappoint you. He says, okay, what about those bhikkhunis? Bhikkhunis are nuns, right? Fully ordained nuns, or who follow. Remember, Buddha was raised by his maternal auntie, Maha Prajapati Gautami, right? Because his own mother, Mahamaya, Mahadevi, passed away soon after his birth. So he was literally raised by his auntie. And turns out that, of course, when Buddha decided to renounce the world, and both Yashodhara, his wife, previous wife, Rahula's mother, and his stepmother, if you want, Prajapati, basically they decided, they said, okay, we are also relinquishing, we are renouncing the whole household plus life as a queen and the princess, and they basically follow Buddha's path. But turns out, along with them, whole Shakya daughters and many thousands of women basically follow them. So they got so many disciples along with them. And in chapter 12, Buddha first of all announced enlightenment of Prajapati Gautami, and then also enlightenment of Yashodhara, his own previous wife, Rahula's mother. And he also said that all the bhikkhunis amongst who are amongst Yashodhara and Gautami's following, they will also become enlightened at a certain point. So basically, Buddha prophesies the awakening, full enlightenment of even the female monastics. So that's important. Okay, so that's our plan roughly. So let's see if we can move until chapter 12 to see some of those important sections. Other than that, I think there are, of course, a lot of other interesting informations we'll just skip. So let me share you screen. And screen is this. Okay. So full zoom out. All right. So let's begin with then chapter 9, prophecies to Ananda Rahula. Now, of course, you can understand that Ananda and Rahula, they were just listening to all the prophecies Buddha made. Hundreds of monks were already prophesied, and Rahula and Ananda, they were not yet. So they're kind of, I suppose, curious, maybe a little bit anxious. What's happening with me? Yeah, you said all the Buddha's major disciples now, of course, at this point, they were all prophesied to become fully enlightened, but Ananda and Rahula, they are not yet. So, but then if you look at 9.3, the Bhagavan said to Brother Ananda, you, Ananda, in the future time will appear in the world as a Tathagata. Tathagata means one gone beyond. Taharat, the perfect enlightenment, enlightened Buddha, the one with the perfect wisdom, conduct, Sugata, the know of the world, unsurpassable guide who comes, who tame beings, the teacher of the gods and humans, the Buddha, the Bhagavan, named Sagara Varadhara, Bhuti, Vikriti, Abhijna. Abhijna, yes. It's quite a long name, mouthful of name. Anyway, the point is, yes, Ananda, remember Ananda is Buddha's attendant. It's interesting, of course, we won't go into detail. The relationship Buddha and Ananda was quite interesting because when Buddha was, of course, when his ministry becoming very busy, then of course people noticed that he definitely needed somebody who actually look after him quite carefully, and not only that, somebody who can look after his itinerary. Of course, probably those days they were not written itinerary and anything like that, but somebody who actually plans. And then there were so many volunteers from elderly disciples. Most of them wants to serve Buddha, but not Ananda. Ananda has no interest to serve Buddha. But then Buddha said, okay, I want Ananda. I want Ananda to serve me as attendant. But then Ananda has a terms. Ananda basically said, yeah, if you accept my my terms, then I will be I will become your attendant. And one of the terms, actually very healthy terms, if you look at this, is that not to give any teachings if Ananda was not there. Well, you must say, why? Why is that term? Well, this term is so important because if you look into history now, the reason why we have the three Pitakas maintained and preserved, mostly because it is said that Ananda heard every discourse Buddha has given because of that term. Had not Ananda put in front of Buddha that particular term and condition, Buddha would have taught anywhere in the absence of Ananda. And that means there would be a lot of teaching the discourses that Ananda would have not heard. Now, the reason why this is important is because when Buddha passed away, when Buddhist congregations start compiling three Pitakas, then of course there has to be somebody who actually heard all the discourse of Buddha. And of course, there was none other than Ananda. But Ananda during that time was an ordinary person. But he worked really hard and he became Arahant, and then he basically presented. And the good thing is, he says he basically heard all the discourses, because in fact, the condition was that when Ananda was for some reason he was absent, Buddha has to repeat what he said in other discourses to Ananda. So Buddha has to come back home and repeat what he said to to Ananda. That of course is so helpful, because then the Tripitaka literally, we could say, contain almost all entire teachings of Buddha. And one of the remarkable quality of Ananda is his memory. It's a retention power. It's just like a modern tape recording system. It just captures everything Buddha. And therefore, if you read Buddha Sutras, you'll say, once Bhagavan was here in such and such place, and then of course, usually it's Ananda reporting the place and giving the situation, the environment, and then the context of the sutra. Usually you'll see that Ananda mostly do that. So that is a very healthy term. And there's another healthy term. Let's imagine, right? Buddha was initially reluctant to ordain female monastics as a part of his institution. Buddha refused to, when Prajapati Gautami approached Buddha 3 times, right? 3rd time he agreed with the intervention of Ananda. Imagine there was a conservative, let's say a conservative monk. Who could that be conservative? I can't nominate Shariputra and Moggallana Putra in those days, because individually, fully liberated individual. But if you have a conservative monk who basically think that female a man is superior and female are inferior, and that's actually how Indian culture usually sees it. If you look into Indian religious culture, particularly Puranas, and there are certain sections, especially in Manusmriti. In fact, females are not even allowed to, are prohibited from even doing performing any rituals. It has with men all the time, and not only the sons. If they're the daughters, of course, they cannot participate in any of the events. Now, if let's say that Buddha's attendant turns out to be somebody like that, very conservative man, then you may have a very different Buddhist teaching. The reason why Ananda played a very important role is because Ananda was so supportive of female monastics. He basically goes on and says he was the one who actually convinced Buddha to. Of course, Buddha has his own plan, but generally people see it. Okay, Buddha might be some sort of little bit very careful, because Indian culture is very sensitive, and they would not support institution where men and women are almost like elevated at a certain similar level, because after all, Buddha lived in India, and India is very patriarchal society. So if you don't, and that if Indian societies did not support these Sangha, then he would collapse very quickly. So he was very careful. But Ananda basically sometimes convinced Buddha, say, isn't actually the great compassion of Prajapati Kodami that she raised you? Is she not, is she not capable of getting enlightened? And these sort of questions were repeatedly put to Buddha by Ananda, basically working in favor of female congregation. So that's why, of course, Ananda's attendant role as a very crucial and played very crucial role in the Buddha's success of instituting not only male monastics, but also female monastics as a part and parcel of his Sangha community. So that's one, you could say, well, if this is one option, but if you take another look and look at actually Parinibbana Sutta, Mahaparinirvana Sutra, massive sutra in Mahayana tradition, but fairly a short sutra in Pali tradition, then as soon as Buddha got enlightened, he was requested by Mara to pass away. Mara said, okay, Tathagata, you are already at Tathagata. I can't harm you. Basically, you are out of my trap. I've been trapping you, trying to ensnare you for all the ages, and so far I succeeded, but not now anymore. You are a free individual. You are fully liberated. And so he says, your job is done. You're fully liberated. No, your job is done. Now please enter into Nibbana, Parinibbana. And Buddha said, Buddha basically made this promise to Mara. He says, Mara, that can't happen. That can't happen. I cannot die now. He said, I cannot die until and unless my Sangha, and within that Sangha, Buddha said both bhikshus, bhikkhunis, shramanera and shramanerikas. So both monk and female monastics, as well as fully ordained monks and nuns, until and unless they are fully established in Dharma, I won't die. So that was the promise Buddha gave to Mara as soon as becoming enlightened. So it looks like Buddha has this both male-female monastic institution in the very beginning of his mind, as soon as he become enlightened. But in order to materialize that, of course, he needed support. If his monastics did not support him, then he would not be succeed. So Ananda was there literally to make his project very successful. So that's one of the reasons why I think that Ananda's role here is very crucial. But there's an important point Buddha makes here also in that relationship. Apparently, okay, I have quickly attained, no, okay. So if you look at this, all right. So here it says, noble sons Ananda and I'm reading 9.13, 9.13. Noble sons Ananda and I together at the same moment developed the aspiration to the highest complete enlightenment in front of Tathagatas, the Arhat, perfectly enlightened Buddha, Dharma Ganga Abhiyud Kataraja. Essentially, in front of this Buddha, both Ananda and Shakyamuni Buddha made the same privilege to become truly enlightened being for the good of, for the benefit of all beings. Now you could ask the question: Ananda was still, Ananda is still a disciple of a Buddha, but Buddha became enlightened billions of years, eons ago. What's the difference? Buddha gives the answer. He says, the difference is, he says, this noble son has been continuously dedicated, receiving many teachings, while I was dedicated diligently in practice. So that's the difference. Buddha said, I practiced the teaching. He was interested in just listening to the teaching. So he's still here amongst you, not fully liberated, to become fully enlightened in many eons later on. So that's an interesting point that you won't see actually the differentiation being made. So this, so if it is true that Buddha and Ananda, so you can see actually how close connection, kinship that they have. So billions and billions of lifetimes. And even in this line, of course, he remember Ananda was just listening to every discourses and memorize and keep in safe every discourses, and he'll be doing the same thing again and again for many future Buddhas until and he become fully enlightened. So that's another interesting point. And say that is why I have quickly attained the highest complete enlightenment of perfect Buddhahood, and it is why this good Ananda will be a keeper of Dharma, treasurers of the Bhagwan. Yes, true, because he's the treasurer, literally Dharma Bandaka, essentially the treasurer that keeps Buddha's teaching safe. So that's, I think, a noteworthy point. And now then, of course, in 9.17, you realize this is where Buddha prophesies his son, Rahula. Bhagwan said to brother Rahula, you, Rahula, in future time will honor, venerate, show respect for, and make offerings to Tathagatas, Arahats, perfectly enlightened Buddhas, as numerous as atoms in the world, and then will become the Tathagata Arahat, perfect enlightened Buddha at a certain point. So basically, after many kalpas, still venerating a lot of other Buddhas and practicing their teaching, and then he eventually become Buddhas named this one, very tall name again. So the point is, I think that even in this life, remember both Rahula and Ananda, they were Shravakas, just basically Buddha's disciples, intending, listening to Buddha's teachings, and then they, of course, down the track, they will become fully enlightened. Okay, so that's that, chapter 9. I think the other interesting things, but I think is nothing much that I can be of any help. Right, and in this chapter, Dharmapanakas actually like the job of Ananda. You essentially the teachers of Buddha Dharma, either like doing it, spreading it through teaching, or actually retaining it through memory, just as Ananda does. And here, of course, Buddha nominates Bodhisattva Vaishyaja Raj. Vaishyaja Raj, Mengi Gerbo in Tibetan usually, because in fact we consider himself also the king of medicine. So you can see, of course, I'll have an image of medicine Buddha, the blue color. You might have seen him. In this, I think most point is whoever, if you 10.2, he says, whoever among them has heard even one verse or heard one line of a verse, or within just an aspiration has rejoiced in this sutra. We are talking about Lotus Sutra. or for those in the fourfold assembly, Vaishya Raja, I prophesize they will attain the highest complete enlightenment. So those whoever study, and among, of course, that means we'll be included, which is a good news. I'm just joking. I'm sure enlightenment can't be that easy, otherwise for an individual. But it looks like the sutra seems to make it so. So at least on the surface of it, it looks like so simple. So, and just listening to a verse, I'm sure it's not just listening to a verse. I'm sure it is just understanding at a very deep level one verse, because that's all you need. And even sometimes a teacher says just understanding the breath, and at a very deeper level. Basically, on the surface level, we can understand that breath just going in and come out. But on a deeper, very deeper level, along with the breath, you are able to feel the totality of the body. And when it does, of course, there are even a lot of examples where even within third world country, individuals become fully liberated, arahant, just by observing the practice of anapana. Because when they observe the breath, they are not just observing the breath, they're actually understanding fully the deeper level, the deeper relationship. And when you understand deeper relationship, also you understand the deeper relationship of the subtle mind and the subtle breath, which is what, of course, the subtlest, I suppose, subtlest teachings of Buddha. Okay, so I mean, I'm sure that actually that's its minimum requirement. Otherwise, enlightenment becomes almost too cheap. If just recitation of recitation of one stanza, if enlightenment is valuable, then it could be. Okay, and then he says 10.4, whoever retains even one verse from this Dharma teaching, or reads it, teaches, or recites it, or writes it, or having written it, remembers it, or from time to time look at it, and whoever has the same veneration for the text as one would have for the Tathagata, and honors, venerates, makes offerings to it, and goes on and on. And I prophesy that all of them will attain the highest complete enlightenment. So, and that's why, of course, that's one of the reasons why this Lotus Sutra is very, for especially for Buddhist, from Buddhist devotional standpoint, very, very important. I mean, I had to be just frank. Unless you go deep understanding of the sutra, I'm not sure if actually just a surface level understanding is going to be enough. That's certainly wouldn't be enough. Deeper level understanding, no problem. That would still require a lot of work, of course. All right. So I think that's about it. And then also he in this sutra also says that to those who mistreat the sutra or don't pay respect to the sutra, it's just like, if worse than disrespecting, dishonoring a Buddha, and would accrue a lot of negative karmas. So that's, of course, we have seen. And in fact, it says straight away go to hell. That's the consequence. If you don't want to go to hell, don't say anything bad about the sutra. Okay, that's, if there were a man who stood before me on a frown, okay, with a frowning face, with a malice, okay, spoke unpleasant things to me for an entire aeon, then that man would create vast bad karma, of course. Now remember, we were just giving an example. Let's say that the Buddha, somebody was just abusing Buddha, constantly for aeon, and he says, I declare that even greater bad will created by those who speak unpleasantly and abusively to those who possess this sutra. Okay, so and he says, those who possess this sutra and those who are teaching this sutra. So don't say anything bad to me. Just joking. So yeah, I mean, This kind of thing, I'm not sure. I hard to take. Anyway, how seriously should you take this kind of things? Maybe for some very devotional person, maybe it's a good thing. At least, okay, let's put it this way. For us, modern skeptical mind, it's kind of very difficult to make sense of it. But if there is somebody who really takes seriously of these teachings and then try to refrain from abusing not only Buddha but also scriptures, that would, of course, that would serve the purpose. There's nothing there's for this person to lose. Nothing get lost. Okay, and then of course the reverse is just like honoring, respecting, and offering to Buddha. It says if you honor the sutra in a massive way, of course, great karma, positive karma will be accrued. I think so. There is nothing much other than repetition of the same sort of point in this chapter. I don't think. Okay, so let's move to this appearance of sutra, appearance of the stupa. Now, in this, again, we can fairly, all of a sudden, it so happened, of course, the context is this. So Buddha and all the bodhisattvas and Shravakas were listening, right? Remember, this teaching was given at the wall chapel. So all the congregation, huge, and all of a sudden, stupa appeared from thin air. And then, of course, Buddha was asked, what is this and what is it? And then stupa, you know the stupa, I suppose all of us would know stupa, what that means. Stupa supposed to symbolizes Buddha's mind. And the stupa basically emerged from thin air, and then it started speaking. It start talking, and this is what stupa said first. The words came from the precious stupa. The Tathagata, and this is what he said, Tathagatas have no thinking, no thoughts. They manifest all modes of conduct. Tathagatas do not originate from skandhas, dhadus, and ayatanas. They do not come into being from karma, kleshas, parents, primary elements. They have no connection with the flesh, blood, and veins. You get a very transcendent picture of Tathagata. Of course, some later, some Tibetan scholars, of course, take this seriously, that historical Buddha Shakyamuni is not the real one. The real Buddha is Dharmakaya. Dharmakaya is neither body, no thoughts, no flesh, hasn't come from the parents, and not from the elements, basically transcendent, entirely transcendent. So sometimes, of course, but I personally find it very difficult to kind of make sense of it, wrap my head around it, that kind of idea. But actually, turns out that idea comes from the sutra again. Transcendent Buddha that has nothing, is not eminent in the universe. So which means you could, that raises another question. What is the point of Shakyamuni Buddha? Is Buddha Shakyamuni Buddha a Buddha after all? Because looks like he is a product of skandhas. He's a dhatus, constitutions, forces, if you like, domains, and 5 senses originated from parents. He was once, of course, heir of his own karma, a product of his parents, product of primary elements, composite of flesh, blood, and veins. Does that mean that Shakyamuni Buddha was not a Buddha? If you take this transcendent Buddha seriously, and that is taken as the model, or then yes, I think that Buddha that we see, actually the one who got enlightened in Bodh Gaya, was not Buddha at all. At least, of course, there are people who take the hard line, sort of a very dichotomic relationship. But then there are Tibetan scholars who says that no, actually, that Buddha with flesh bones is just like the same, because there are 2 ways of seeing the same thing, just like the relation to truth. So there is no contradiction with the transcendent Buddha or the eminent Buddha that actually that dwells within human realm, and that demonstrate, that gives us teachings. Yeah, and then also it goes further. They have no inhalation, no exhalation, no connection with life, no connection with life. Tathagata is the same. Now, you might say, okay, there's another reason why they want to make this point. I think the Lotus Sutra makes this point because he wants to say, in the end, that Tathagata is the ultimate reality, the nature. Nature is neither male nor female. Nature is just, the bare truth. They are not permanent, not impermanent. However, Tathagata are Prapuratna, who possess into nirvana many hundreds of thousands of quintillions of eons ago, who is free from thoughts of ideas, is seen for the sake of beings. Now, you might say, okay, who is this? Who is in the stupa that is speaking? Actually, that's the Buddha, the Prapuratna. Basically, the whole point is, if you go a bit further, he says here, Tathagata is true nature. The true nature is the limit of reality. That limit of reality is the essence of phenomena. And that basically, that's what Buddha is. So therefore, if you understand in the ordinary sense, Buddha has to be just look like us. Buddha has to be somewhat like Indian, or they look like a Tibetan Buddhas. Tibetan Buddhas have typical Tibetan dress. Chinese Buddha have typical Chinese dress. Haven't you seen the Taiwanese Buddhas or Thailand Buddha in Thailand? They look very different. Thai Buddhas are different. Chinese Buddha, sometimes big fat belly Buddha. So they are all cultural accretions, right? Culturally influenced the picture, the conception of Buddha. So that can't be Buddha. Buddha, Tathagata, if that Tathagata resembles or basically expresses a reality, then that has to be beyond that kind of limitation. So that's why the point is being made. Okay, but this is not, I think what I'm interested here is mostly this bit. Okay, so let's go back. Right.
Sonam, do you mind if I ask something?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Interrupt. I'm just sort of I'm just wondering then in the form of like Shakyamuni Buddha and his enlightenment, I'm just sort of don't see that context of why there's only that one Buddha figure, that many thousands of years ago, as far as sort of still relating to the lineage of all the teachings and trying to understand that it's actually representing just the the true essence of phenomena. I don't why is there only the one so far that we're relating to?
I'm not sure if I understood your question. Can you say it again, please?
Probably not. I'm not sure if I can.
So you're saying that why is there one Buddha?
Well, just that, in the teachings when they're saying that it's all, sort of in transcendence, that's the representation of the Buddha, that's the essence of the teachings. And so why do you think is there just that one figure, representative Shakyamuni Buddha, reaching enlightenment in Bodh Gaya at that time?
Okay.
Within this sort of lineage of teaching like that. How come it's getting represented like that then?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and that's a problem that actually we need to address, and that is, remember, of course, let's say that prophecies Buddha made thousands now. Of course, one will become eventually Buddha, right? On this case, on this sutra, because after all, everyone is prophesized amongst the congregation, everyone. And not only that, whoever reads this sutra in a little bit, one verse, will become a Buddha at a certain point. But then the point is, why is it that actually we always say that there is a historical Buddha, Shakyamuni's teaching? I think there is probably this difference that could be made. I'm not 100% sure, but what traditional standpoint is. But people ask me this question. So when I think about it, so you got two different types of Buddhas, right? You are equally Buddha, but one type of Buddha, like Buddha Shakyamuni and previous Buddha, and the future Buddha Maitreya, these are basically wheel-turning Buddhas, Dharma wheel turners. Dharma wheel turners and just other Buddhas are quite different. I think there might be individuals becoming Tathagata, becoming Buddha, but not necessarily a universal Dharma wheel turners like Shakyamuni Buddha. Universal Dharma wheel turner, of course, there's certain positions. You got as fixed positions, and in this kalpa 1,000 Buddhas, no more than that, right? But if Buddha's prediction in this sutra is right, there are a lot more than 1,000 Buddhas. And of course, Mahayana generally, if you look at this, some Tibetan texts, Mahayana texts will say, every particles in the universe represent Buddha. The equal number of Buddhas, just like particles of the universe. So, and those are the Buddhas, in a sense, fully awakened and reach their enlightenment. But they do not need to. Turn the wheel of Dharma. So that's the difference. Now, of course, the tradition that we talk about, Buddha's teaching, maintained after eons and then gradually lost. These are the teachings we are referring to, literally like the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, Maitreya Buddha, and the previous Buddhas who actually turned the wheel of Dharma. And sometimes they turn the wheel of Dharma with tantric teachings included. Other times they are no tantras, just like more or less like other prakyaparamita sort of teaching. So I think that's the difference. The Buddhas don't have to be Dharma wheel turners all the time. So that if that explanation is plausible, then you can have two different ways of becoming enlightened. You really don't have to be enlightened under the Bodhi tree at the same time. Of course, there's only one Bodhi tree, and there can be only one Buddha at that particular moment. What we are talking about actually attaining Buddha in so many different realms, in so many different ways. And that's, I think, the two both can be compatible without contradicting each other. Yeah. So when we refer to the traditional teachings of Buddha, of course, you could say, generally the assumption is this: every Buddha teaches the same thing, Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path. Now, within the Mahayana tradition, of course, sometimes Buddha include also tantric teaching with it, along with it. Sometimes they don't. But the basic fundamental teachings of Eightfold Path, Four Noble Truths, they are the universal teachings of all the Buddhas. So, because after all, explanations. After all, if they are true Buddhas, they have to realize truth. There can be many truths. If the realization of truth that Buddha realized is universal, then all the Buddhas will realize the same truth. Right? In the same way, I think if we work harder and if what we realize, what we attain gradually, that help us to liberate ourselves from anger, hatred, those things, that's no different from the truth that actually Buddha realized. Except that, of course, each individual has to realize the truth with their own faculty, because it is only by doing that individual liberation can emerge, not from relying on other teachings. So that's how I see it.
Sonam?
Yes?
Sonam, sorry, I've got a question about the truths.
Please go ahead.
I'm a bit trying to wrap my head around it. Are you saying that through this process of self-liberation, self-discovery, through the process of Buddhahood, whichever sort of sector path you go down, and that you reach that state of enlightenment, but you say, well, I understood that there could be multiple truths, yet we all have one sort of end goal. Does that mean that even though there's enlightenment, there could be different forms of enlightenment, or is it just one enlightenment?
You could say different forms of enlightenment, but they're enlightened by the same truth. Similar. Okay. What do I mean? Same truth is the truth of impermanence, right? Buddhists about the truth of 4 different kinds: truth of impermanence, truth of non-self, truth of emptiness, truth of interdependence. These are the 4 metaphysical truths that Buddhist talks about. And ultimately, if you want, maybe truth of nirvana. Now, in order to realize nirvana, one has to realize impermanence, that how the fluctuation, the changing nature of things. And the changing nature of things, if that's the truth, that can be different from you and me. If the atoms are constantly changing, whether the atoms actually exist in you or me, it doesn't matter. They would be still oscillating, constantly changing. And that's the impermanence. The idea that everything in the universe, even the tiniest molecules, are constantly changing and constantly dying and replenishing themselves. That's the impermanence truth. And Buddhist claim is that that is universal. Everything in the universe, there is no static, no permanence, even though they look permanent on the surface level. But if you go deeper, of course, everything's impermanent. Now, what happens is, for the meditator, that realization come first. Especially, of course, if you a vipassana meditator, you first think that impermanence, cross impermanence, you start realizing whole your bodily sensation, your body sensation basically arising, passing, and then it becomes more intense, and you see your whole constitution, whole your being, just like water waves, just like whole flow, constantly rising, passing. That is what you call impermanence. But if you go deeper, then at a certain point you realize your whole existence is like the movement of the waterfall, just constantly running, fast, very fastly changing. And that's realization occurs because when your job is just observing everything, just simply observing, and that truth will gradually manifest itself. When our mind becomes more and more in tune, fine-tuned, that's the realization. So now if you go further than that, at a certain point you realize that there is actually so-called existence, there is no, and the so-called existence is constant change. Constant change constitutes existence. That's what you call the truth of impermanence. Now, as a result of understanding, realizing truth of impermanence, what happens is automatically our sense of permanence shatters. Psychological grip that we have, static identity, static me, static I, that automatically melts away. Automatically melt away. That's why it is so crucial that actually that realization has to come first. And then now if you move further, keep going, what happens? Even that the transcends the sight that you see, the whole your existence, whole your being, just like water wave, you will notice that at a certain point, your whole your being is just like you are looking at a fan, right? Sometimes you need a fan, you have seen a fan that moves so fast. When it moves so fast, it is moving, but actually you don't see it. Because so it's moving so fast, you're not seeing it. And that's what you call selflessness, that you don't see yourself. You're looking at yourself, but you don't see yourself. Just looking at a fan, fast moving fan, oscillating fan, very fast, and you notice that actually you're blowing a lot of air from it, but you can't see the fan because it's moving so fast. That's exactly the truth of selflessness. Truth of selflessness is is basically the other side of impermanence. If you take impermanence, realize impermanence further, that's what you notice. Your whole existence is just a constant waves, constant changes, nothing further. So then, of course, if you take further than that, you will notice that there is the whole subject-object duality constantly merges, and that's what you call total emptiness. But that emptiness realization, selfless realization, has to be experienced within the framework of one's body. And that's why if you, because you have already gone to meditate vipassana, we know in what context we are talking about. We can understand this only if you have experience from the top of your head to the tip of your toes. When you are able to experience your whole body, then you can use your body as actually like the laboratory to test what is the truth of impermanence. First thing is, yes, you will notice change. And your job is just watching just like a real critical scientist, not assuming anything, not believing anything, You just observing, and then things becomes automatically manifest itself. And that observation is so critical because you are not taking, you are not believing, and you're just simply observing, and that observation becomes more and more acute. And it is those observations, this is called wisdom. Technical Buddhist term is called wisdom. But this wisdom is not the eye that we are talking about. It is the inner eye, right? Inner eye, inner insight that you start opening. And when you start opening the inner eye, gradually you notice your grip or the tendency for permanence or fixed identity gradually melts away. Then even the sense of I, egocentricity, centricity, or I-ness, I grasping, that will gradually melt away too. And then, of course, as you similarly, if you take this practice all along, then gradually all the anger, fear, animosity, aggression, and anything that limits us, that goes away. And that when you are fully, basically, let's say, when you hold your potential, what do you call Buddha, to fully awake, and that there is no limit that is constrained from the fear, anger, aggression, and those things. That's what you call Buddha, right? So, but then Buddhahood basically must be premised upon the realization, understanding of the truth. And the truth turns out to be universal, at least. Truth of impermanence, truth of non-self, truth of emptiness, and the truth of Nibbana. So in that sense, you could say, on the one hand, the truths are universal, but the way in which each one of us has to realize is that each one of us has to do it ourselves. And that's one of the Buddha's fundamental teaching. He says, I am a teacher. I can lead you to the path, but you are the one who has to walk. Because you, and that's why Buddha did not promise enlightenment. There was no quick fixes. There was no easy way forward. It is individual responsibility. They take individual that has to eventually walk and train and meditate hard in eventually to become enlightened. Does that answer this question, Pensala? I'm not too sure.
That's good, thank you.
Okay. All right. So now in chapter. Okay. Yep. So we're going to move quickly in this. These are skip. 71. Yeah. Here's an interesting one. So this is the Buddha's prediction, getting close to Buddha's prediction of Devadatta. Okay, where is it? I'll become the slave of, oh yeah, okay. So again, this time, of course, Buddha Shakyamuni was teaching all bodhisattvas there, and he said at a certain point, he says, once when he was a king of the country, and he was, of course, he was looking for, he was seeking Dharma, but he could not find anyone who actually could teach him Dharma. So he said, he was a king of the country, but then he said, okay, if anybody can become, can teach me Dharma, I'm willing to become your slave and remain as your slave for the rest of my life. Remember, this is one of the Buddha's previous lives. And he says, here, I rang the bell, announced that I will become the slave of anyone who gives me the highest Dharma and teach me its meaning. That's the commitment Buddha had. Basically, he was prepared to relinquish his own position and to become a slave. And it turns out, at that time, there was a rishi. Rishi means sadhu. Sadhu is a kind of, let's say, Indian monk, if you want, a mendicant who just wander around, renounce the whole world, and basically meditate. And he says, I have, and then that rishi says, great king, I have the Dharma teaching of the Supreme Sutra called White Lotus of the good Dharma. So basically, he said, the Rishi said, yeah, I can teach you Lotus Sutra if you want to become a servant. I can give you teaching. And he says, if you promise to be my slave, I will I will enable you to hear it. Okay. And of course, because King made a pledge, said, yes, I'll certainly, yes. If you can give me the teaching, I'm happy to be your slave. And who now? Then Buddha goes and he says, Bhikshu Devdada was, okay, oh, that was a little quick. So yes, 76, he says, I shall be the slave whoever teaches me the Dharma. And again, things being repeated. And here at this point, on 80, yep, 81, okay. Bhikkhu, what do you think? If you have the thoughts that at that time, on that occasion, the king was someone else, do not see it in that way. Why is that? At that time, on that occasion, I was the king. Now he says, that king was me. Buddha was talking about, of course, himself, referring to himself. That king was me, because if we have the thought that at that time, on that occasion, the Rishi was someone else, do not see it in that way. Why is that? Because at that time, on that occasion, this Devdada was that Rishi. Okay? Now you realize, actually, at 1 eons ago, Buddha's teacher was Devdada. Devdada was Buddha's teacher. Devdada taught him, Lotus, gave teachings on Lotus Sutra. So then, of course, now Buddha says, Bhikshus, Devdada was my Kalyan Mitra. Kalyan Mitra is a very, nice term, basically benevolent friend. Sometimes we could call spiritual friend. But, and sometimes His Holiness, of course, occasionally use this in referring to Chinese as Kalyan Mitra. Kalyan Mitras are not just ordinary friends. Kalyan Mitras will give you a hard time. The reason they give you a hard time is because only giving you a hard time, you can grow. If your friend says all the nice things, or even though you're doing horrible things, and if your friends the nice things, that's not a Kalyan Mitra. Kalyan Mitras are actually prepared to say the right thing, correct thing, and because they are interested. They are interested in bringing, let's say, bringing change in our personality. So now Devdada, of course, and Buddha says not on that. He was a Kalyan Mitra, benevolent friend. With the help of Devdada, he was able to train himself and perfect him in all the 6 perfections. And this is what he says. Because Devdada was my Kalyan Mitra, and relying on that Kalyan Mitra, I fulfilled the 6 perfections. Right? It was through relying on Devdada that I perfected great love, great compassion, great rejoicing, great equanimity, the 32 signs and 80 features of great being, a fathom wide aura, golden color, 10 strengths, 4 fearlessness, 4 methods of attracting disciples, 18 unique qualities of Buddha. The great miracles, powers, and the liberating beings in the 10 directions. The reason is quite simple. If it is one of our so-called friends, not the Kalyan Mitra, then that person is going to basically praise you where it is not deserving, or bring you down when it is not deserving. Because the person's Kalyan Mitras have real interest in us so that we can flower. If you take it, of course, because sometimes if we mistake it, Kalyan Mitra, and then we may think, okay, this person is unnecessarily attacking me, then we miss taking the lesson. So if we, let's say, if you have seen Buddha, the series, the documentary series, Indian, I think one of the Indian filmmakers produced a series of movies on Buddha's life. You'll see, of course, Devdada challenged Buddha all the way through. Right? And it is this challenge, of course, with respect to which he is able to develop patience. So perfection and patience, if you are not tested, how do you pay? If you think that you are in the forest and you're a very patient man, that's not a perfect patience. If you're tested, if you're rebuked, abused physically, workily, and then there's no bitterness inside gradually, and it becomes, in fact, And then that's really using the opportunity to develop. And so, of course, because Devdada tested in so many different ways, you can see why Buddha was referring Devdada as a Kalyamitra. And then he says, because I declare to you, I make it known to you, this Devdada Bhikkhu will in the future time, after countless innumerable eons, in the world realm named Devas Panya, to be the Tathagata Arahat, perfectly enlightened Buddha. So basically, Devraja, he will become the God king, or actually the name of Buddha, Devraja in the end. So this is probably one of those typical, I think probably one of the rare sutras that has Devdada applauded or celebrated in this way. Because otherwise Devdada is always the villain that always see as a very evil person. But here, of course, Buddha celebrates Devdada as his Kalyan Mitra. You don't see this actually in many other sutras. I don't know if there is any other sutra that has Devdada's life being celebrated this way. Okay, so that's one, I think, the more notable point for us from the sutra standpoint. And then, okay, so Devdada's full awakening prophecies, that's done. Well, let me take you to 192, where you see the Sagara, the daughter of Naga King, Sagara. Yeah, okay. Now here's the reference. This sutra is profound. Remember, we are referring to Lotus Sutra. Lotus Sutra is profound, subtle, and difficult to say, said Pratyakut. There is no other sutras that is equal. Is there a being who is able to comprehend this sutra jewel and attain the highest complete enlightenment for the perfect Buddhahood? That was the question. This sutra is so tough, so difficult, so profound. Is there anybody who actually comprehend this? That was the question. Noble one answered the Manjushri. There is the daughter, and this is Manjushri. Manjushri, remember, from my understanding, Manjushri is the epitome of Buddha's wisdom. So Manjushri said, answer, and he says, there is one, yes, there is one person I can think of, and that is the daughter of Sakara. Sagar essentially means ocean, the king of Nagas, who was born 8 years ago. She has a great wisdom, sharp faculties. The action of her body, speech, and mind are preceded by wisdom. She has attained the retention by which she remembers the words and the meaning of the teachings of Tathagatas. She has attained the instant, in an instant, 1,000 samadhis of meditation on all phenomena and all bodies, all beings. She has irreversible aspiration for enlightenment. Irreversible aspiration for enlightenment means, when, of course, word irreversible means that can be returned. You cannot relapse. That's the point position. So when you attain irreversible position, the Sagara daughter cannot become. There is no way that she become one day sort of Pratyeka Buddha or Shravaka looking for individual liberation. That's impossible for her now because she has reached a position that that she's destined to become a fully enlightened Buddha, Tathagata. So that's what the notion of irreversibility here. She because her aspiration for enlightenment was so intense. She has made vast prayers. She cares for all beings as she would for herself. She can develop qualities and never lose them. She has a smiling face. Very important. Smiling face. She has a perfect, magnificent complexion. She has a loving mind. She speaks with compassion. She's able to attain the highest complete enlightenment of perfect Buddhahood. So from Manjushri's standpoint, yes, if there is anyone who can understand Lotus Sutra, it's Sagara daughter, the daughter of the Sagara, the Naga king. Okay, so this is important because that's put right. The context is this. Generally, of course, most of the religions, if you look around, most of the religions are patriarchal. They always favor men. So for some reason, Females always are being looked down. The femininity always being looked down in almost all the religious traditions. Of course, and you could ask the same question to Buddhism, in Buddhist teaching. If you look around in Buddhist countries, certainly patriarchal rules. Most of the dominant positions all held by men, and that's the case in Tibet. Even Bhikkhuni lineage was never even introduced. That would itself is a kind of symbol of patriarchy, to a certain extent. Most of the other countries, Theravada countries, received full ordination, but then full ordination of bhikshunis was lost. So no ordination now, except in China. In Taiwan, there's a lineage of full ordination. Other than that, all are lost. So generally, people think that Buddhism is actually no different from most of the religion when it comes to the treatment of females and the way in which females Sangha is being looked down upon. That, to a certain extent, I think that is true because cultures are always dominated by male for some reason. So matriarchal culture, and that's actually Tibet. Actually, their matriarchal culture is very strong in the villages. My own town, my own family. My mother actually she's the boss. she takes all the shot. So I suppose many of the Tibetan families are like a matriarchal families. But generally, I think if you look at the power structure, usually always men. So there's some problem. So the question can be asked: is Buddhist institutions like that? Why is Buddhist institution matriarchal? After all, Buddha basically said everyone is become fully enlightened. There is every being, whether male or female, has no difference. And then, of course, if you look around again, the example of fully enlightened beings, how many women, how many men? You need a certain examples, right? There's all thousands of monks, but female. Even in Tibet, yeah, of course, you have to go and look at the annals to find out and count the numbers, and you might not find many. But they are, of course, key players, women players too, certainly. So if you look at this sort of text, you will see that there are examples like daughter of Sagara. But then there's an interesting problem. Okay, I don't know whether this is a problem. So the daughter of Sagara. Okay, so let's read this a little bit further, and then let me comment it. Okay, so now she was being challenged. Manjushri is on her side. Remember, Manjushri is on the side of the daughter of Sagara. But the problem is, okay, this one, Pratyakutta, he is also Pratyakutta, I'm reading 11.94. He's a bodhisattva. He basically also challenges. He says, there is nowhere throughout the worlds of the realm of billion worlds, not even the place of the size of a mustard seed, where he has not given up his own body. This is talking about Buddha, right? Only after that he did attain the enlightenment of Buddhahood. Who can believe that the daughter of Sagara could attain the highest complete enlightenment, a perfect Buddhahood in an instant? Prajakut could not basically wrap around his head that, of course, Buddha, Shakyamuni, after eons of hard work, he was able to become Buddha. That's understandable. But this daughter of Sagara becoming enlightened instantly, I can't take it. He said, I can't buy this. And then he said, at that time, then of course, she manifested herself. At that time, the daughter of Sagara, the king of Naga, appeared before them. She bowed her head to the feet of the Bhagwan, sat down on one side and recited these verses. Because remember, this is the congregation where Buddha was present. So she basically sat down beside the Buddha, and then she said this verse. His merit, that merit is profound and pervades every direction. His subtle body is adorned by the 32 signs. He has the excellent features. All beings pay homage to him. All beings come to him like they do a market town. The Tathagata is my witness. Now here is what Sagara, the daughter of Sagara. Tathagata is my witness that my wish is for full enlightenment. I will teach extensively the Dharma that liberates from all. Basically, she said, now, Buddha is my witness. See if I can, if I can, make it. And then at that point, what happens? Shariputra. Unfortunately, most of the Mahayana texts has Shariputra literally like caricature of Shariputra's figure. If you read, let's say, Dharma Sutra, Vajrachetika, you'll see, of course, some caricature of Shariputra. Also, Vimalakirti Sutra, another famous Buddhist sutra, a very interesting one. Again, you see Shariputra challenges the goddess. Buddha said, goddess said, yeah, I can become fully enlightened. And the goddess, Shariputra says, no, you are female born. You are a woman. How can you become enlightened? And then the goddess actually challenges Shariputra. Here, Sagara, the daughter Sagara, basically challenges Shariputra. Anyway, at that time, Shariputra said to the daughter of the Sagara, the king of Naga, noble lady, although this is Shariputra being very gentle, he said, noble lady, although you have an irreversible aspiration, enlightenment, and immeasurable wisdom, it will be difficult for you to attain enlightenment. Noble lady, a woman may maintain diligence, create marriage for the thousands of aeons, and complete the 6 perfections, but still she will not attain Buddhahood. Remember, Shariputra holding the position, what do we call conservative position, and said, you're a woman after all, you can't become enlightened. You can basically create so much of merits and attain perfections, but still not Buddhahood. And he says, why is that? It is because a woman has still not attained 5 sense states. Now, this is the reason Shariputra gave. The reason woman cannot become fully enlightened is because she cannot attain those 5 states. The 5 states are being a Brahma. Brahma is the king of God. The second is the states of Sagara. Again, Sagara is another king of God, right? Changpa and Gyajin, Tibetan. Gyajin is Sagara. Third is the state of being one of the 4 Maharajas. Maharajas, if you look at the Buddhist cosmology, you got this one is desire realm, then form realm, formless realm. These realms are actually governed by, some of them have a very powerful Dharmarajas, kings, and those positions are mostly held by men. And he basically, Shariputra said those positions always held by men. And not only that, the 4th one is a state of being Chakravartin. Chakravartin is wheel turning Dharmaraj, like King Ashoka. A universal monarch, they all hold by the position, a position that is not available for women. And then not only that, irreversible bodhisattva. And in other cases, there is another post, and the post of Mara. The post of a devil is always a post for a man, not for women. But it's somehow in this case, in this text, Mara's position is not listed. In other texts, actually, Mara, du leji, or du, the Tibetan word du, the tender god position is always a position that male hold. So basically, Shariputra said, none of those positions can be filled by a woman. And not only that, a Buddhahood position is one of those positions always held by men. That's Shariputra's justification, the reason why Sagara daughter cannot become Buddha, right? So at that time, now what happened? The daughter of Sagara, king of the Nagas, had a jewel of the value of entire realm of 1 billion worlds. She got a jewel, that kind of jewel, valuable, so available, 1 billion worlds, right? The daughter of the Naga king offered it to the Bhagwan. She gave it to the Buddha, and the Bhagwan accepted it out of compassion. Basically, Buddha accepted the jewel. The daughter of Sagara, king of Naga, then asked Prajakutta, remember the one Bodhisattva who challenged her, and Stavira Shariputra, because Shariputra there is also belong to Stavira Wat, as sort of, let's put this way, the elder traditions, or what we call tradition of elders. Nowadays we call Theravada, right? And she said, did the Bhagwan quickly accepted the jewel that I offered to the Bhagwan or not? She asked this question to those two opponents. She got two opponents, two critics. And she said, Shariputra and Prajakutta, I offered Buddha this jewel, incredible, valuable jewel, and Buddha accepted very instantly. Have you noticed it? That was the question. Of course, they would have said, yes. You offered it quickly and Bhagavan accepted that quickly. And then she says, now, okay, then she will say, she will make the point. Well, then she says, the daughter of the Sakara, king of Naga, said, Venerable Shariputra, if I have great miraculous power, I will attain the highest complete enlightenment of a perfect Buddhahood even more quickly than the jewel was accepted. So she said, of course, Buddha accepting that didn't take any long, because Buddha accepted immediately. And she said, I can manifest myself, become fully enlightened even faster than that. And thereupon, in front of the entire world, in the front of Stavira Shariputra, the daughter of Sakara, king of Naga, manifested the vanishing of a female genitalia and appearance of male genitalia. Okay? I think we had a discussion at some point, this one. And essentially, basically, she miraculously made her female genitalia disappear and made to appear male genitalia and become bodhisattva instantly. Her transformation into bodhisattva instantly. And then that bodhisattva now went to the south, and in the south world named Vimala manifested the attainment of perfect Buddhahood while seated at the foot of a tree made of 7 precious materials. So anyway, what she did, she basically transformed herself into a male bodhisattva and then basically manifested her full enlightenment under a tree. But that tree didn't say Bodhi tree, a tree made of 7 precious materials. Now, here is a point. So you can see this, but there's another twist in this response. Why is it that Sagara has to transform her body, female body, and into a male? Why is this? Of course, there is a traditional response as Buddhahood is such a high sort of state that requires a certain physical basis to hold that position. But generally, we say the Buddha is neither male nor female. Of course, it has to have some sort of male character, but because after all, Buddhahood is beyond gender. But in this case, she kind of manifested, become even talk about the genitalia, right? Anyway, so some people would still criticize, say, okay, in this case, still the male chauvinism is still present, because after all, she has to become male, and that's the only reason she become Buddha. Why can't she become Buddha when in her female state? So that question still remains, okay? So then they might say that, so there might be some limitations in that sense, female body. This is a sutra, but in Tantra, of course, male body and female body, they are taken as a union. So especially Tantra is probably most female, let's put this way, female-friendly text. Whereas in Sutra, you can go as far as this. And in most of the cases, when female bodhisattvas become fully enlightened, they always transform their body. And this is exactly what does in the Vimalakirti Nirdesha Sutra. Those of you who have read Vimalakirti Nirdesha Sutra, Time Thakwe Do. Vimalakirti Nirdesha Time Thakwe Do. Vimala means Time Thakwa, of course, Kirti Nirdesha Sutra, Time Thakwe Do. In that sutra, you can also see that goddess whom Shariputra challenged transforms her into a bodhisattva, and what she did also, she punishes Shariputra. And she basically punishes Shariputra, and Shariputra and she made Shariputra to appear female. Shariputra couldn't understand. Now he's caught, trapped in a female body. He couldn't come out. He couldn't come out, and then of course, goddess, uncast, did her own thing, and then Shariputra was able to come out, and of course, as a man. But even in that case, the goddess has to become male in order to become a Buddha. So what? So that means, is there something? Looks like there's still something, some sort of tension between Buddhahood and the femininity. And this is actually the case in a case not fully addressed in a sutra text, but in most of the tantric texts, of course, the union of male and female is celebrated in a much more open and sort of as a union rather than having a tension. So that's, I think, it's an important point. I thought worth celebrating and worth sort of taking some notice. And what happened? Now I can't read the whole thing because it would take. At that point, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Prajakut, and Stavira Shariputra fell silent. So what happened? When she manifested all the into Buddha, and basically Vimala in this land of Vimala, and then she basically now she's a Buddha, and witnesses Buddha himself, Shakyamuni Buddha himself. Now you could say Shariputra and Prakyakutta, her two opponents, were dumbfounded. Maybe that's how you would put it in a plain English. Okay, so I think we made a good progress. I think that's all I needed to wanted to say in that chapter. I think we can, of course, we got only 15 minutes, so we can leave it here at this point. All right, so thank you. Any questions? Okay, maybe. Can we quickly see if we can enjoy the next, because it's a kind of related. So when our sort of atmosphere is here in this discussion, I want to complete these two. Let Gautami and Yashodhara to be prophesized in this. Is that okay? Okay, so let me share the text again. Sorry.
Sonam, there's still a lot to think about in that last chapter. I think they were a little bit dumbfounded also to ask any questions up right now. It needs a little bit more time.
Yeah, they were really challenged in the. I mean, there's nothing to say because she basically displays everything
like that
in front of them. So it's not as if she's philosophizing or anything. Just basically shows herself that it is possible, except that of course she turns into a male. So then the question is why? Why that she has to become a male in order to become a fully enlightened? So that question is not addressed. If you ask me the question, I don't know. And of course, probably that's where you need in the end to rely back to tantric text to bring the resolve this transition or resolve this tension. Okay, so let me then quickly. I think we don't have to spend a lot of time here, but when the tempo is on, I think let's try to enjoy this. Try to celebrate the life of Gautami and Yashodhara, two most important, female disciples of the Buddha. Okay, now I think we'll go straight. Remember, of course, Bhagwan's maternal aunt, Mahaprajapati Gautami, right? Mahaprajapati Gautami. So you can see the context. Now, of course, all the fellow monks, not only bodhisattvas, will become Buddha, and the fellow Shravakas, they were all prophesied to become Buddha. So you can see the sort of anticipation amongst the female bhikshuni community, female Buddhist community, very sort of anxious or curious. What's their destination looks like, And the okay, so the Bhagwan's maternal aunt, Maha Prajapati Gotami, and 6,000 bhikkhunis, both bhikkhunis in training and those who had passed beyond training, now arose from their seat at the same time, with their hands and together in homage both towards the Buddha, Bhagwan, and stood there gazing at the Buddha, Bhagwan. So they were looking intensely at Buddha's face, a kind of little bit worried, or maybe. And then Buddha said this. Bhagwan said to the Mahaprajapati Gotami, Gotami, do not stand, gazing at the Tathagata, unhappily thinking. Yes, Tathagata has not spoken to me, has not prophesied the highest complete enlightenment for me. For when I gave a prophecy to the entire assembly, you too, Gotami, received a prophecy accordingly. So then, of course, knowing or reading Gotami's expression and what's happening in her head, Buddha basically responded, Gotami, don't worry too much. I will, along with all other entire assembly, I will also announce your prophecy accordingly. And she said, Gotami, from now on, you will be a bodhisattva, mahasattva, dharma panaka, under 800,000 continuing Buddhas. So many Buddhas, right? And these 6,000 bhikkhunis, both bhikkhunis in training and those who have passed beyond the training, will be bodhisattva dharma panakas with you under those tathagatas. So essentially, when Prajapati become a bodhisattva, of course, as a leader, all her nuns under her entourage are discipleship. She's the leader, and they will also become bodhisattva as well. Beyond that, and even further beyond that, you will complete your bodhisattva practice and appear in the world as a Tathagata, the Arahat, the perfectly enlightened Buddha, the one with a perfect wisdom and conduct, Sugata, the knower of the world, the unsurpassable guide who tames beings, the teacher of the gods and humans. Right. So basically, her name is going to be Sarva Sattva Priya Darshana. Sarva Sattva Priya Darshana. Basically, Sarva Sattva means all beings. Priya means loving. Darshana means loving to be seen, literally. So that's going to be her name. Basically, for full, when she become Buddha, Sarva Sattva Priya Darshana, that's going to be, she's going to be that Buddha, and all the disciples she has will also become her following at that point. Gotami, the Tathagata Arahat, perfectly enlightened Buddha, Sarva Sattva Priya Darshana, will give a prophecy to those six. Now here is another job that actually Gotami also going to do. Buddha is doing exactly this, right? Buddha is prophesizing all the final awakening of his disciples, and he said that Gotami, when she becomes fully enlightened, she will prophesize the final Buddhahood, attainment of Buddhahood for all her 6,000 bodhisattvas who are her following, who are part of her following, of their successive attainments in the highest complete enlightenment. So that's Gotami, important, right? Now, the question is, one thing we could say that, of course, if Gotami, the question, when Gotami become perfect Buddha, Sarva Sattva Priya Darshana, did she relinquish her female genitalia? Or is she still female? Of course, that question wasn't addressed there, so I don't know. But it looks like she became, of course, one thing is she became Buddha, certainly. But then, did she need to, again, transform herself? So that doesn't say, so we can only speculate. So next question, of course, next point is about Bhikkhuni Yashodhara. And Yashodhara, remember, is Buddha's, before before Siddhartha relinquished his family, he was married. Of course, his wife was Yashodhara. Yashodhara, of course, very, let's put it this way, of course, her character is very gentle and very, I don't like this word religious. Sounds spooky if I say religious. But she's a very, I think, a very fine woman, let's put it this way. Very mature in Dharma, full of Dharma. I think that might be the good point. So anyway, she said, this is Buddha commenting on Yashodhara. Bhikkhuni Yashodhara, the mother of Rahula, thought, now of course, because then Yashodhara is among the crowd, and she was only, again, she was thinking the same thing. Thought, Bhagavan has not said my name. What's going on? She's wondering there, of course. And the Bhagavan, knowing the thought that were in the mind of Bhikkhuni Yashodhara, said to the Bhikkhuni Yashodhara. Pali word is Bhikkhuni, right? Sanskrit was Bhikshuni, very close, but basically means fully ordained nun. Yashodhara, I declare to you, I make it known to you that you will be a bodhisattva dharmaphanaka under the 100,000 and 100,000 million Buddhas. So she will become bodhisattva for many, serving as a bodhisattva for many thousand Buddhas. You will eventually complete your bodhisattva practice in the world realm, named Padra, and you will appear in the world as a Tathagata, Arahat, perfectly enlightened Buddha. So first she become a bodhisattva, a certain point, and many millions of years, and then later on she become, of course, full Buddha, attained full Buddhahood, Tathagata. The Buddha, the Bhagwan named Rasmi Satsarhas Paripurna and Torch. So that's going to be her name. When Yashodhara become a Buddha. The lifespan of the Tathagata, Arhata. Remember this Tathagata is, of course, the Buddha, the one gone beyond. Arhat is somebody who has destroyed the enemies, such as hatred or kleshas. Perfect enlightened Buddha, Rasmi Sahasra Paripurna, will be immeasurable. So she's going to have a very, very long life, apparently. And at this, Bhikshuni Mahaprajapati Gotami and her following of 6,000 bhikkhunis, and Bhikshuni Yashodhara and her following for 4,000 bhikkhunis were astonished and amazed by it, and obtaining from the Bhagavan the prophecy of the highest complete enlightenment. Now, one thing that actually Buddha did not mention about Yashodhara is, in the case of Gotami, remember Gotami is Buddha's mother, stepmother. She basically raised Buddha. And she was sometimes, I think now in the contemporary studies, Buddhist studies, people say she was the world's first feminist. Because she actually fought for the female rights in a certain sense, to be a part of the monastic community. She was there, of course. Yashodhara was there, but she has influence on Buddha, because after all, he is her son. She raised him. I brought you up. You shouldn't treat me like this. I suppose Buddha might have heard that kind of argument from King Gotami, but perhaps not in this kind of tone. But in modern time, you could actually envision that kind of. So she would have influence upon Buddha. Yashodhara would have influence of Buddha, but Yashodhara, of course, had a very hard time relinquishing her affection to Buddha, because she see Buddha not as a Buddha, but she see Buddha as a husband, a lover. And Buddha was a Buddha already, of course, already renounced all the attachment, transcended the attachment. Buddha would see Yashodhara and the Prajapati Gotami and everybody else with no difference whatsoever, no favoritism, because that's the mark of becoming enlightened. You basically rise above your small prejudices and biases, and that's the mark of becoming enlightened. So whereas if you're not fully enlightened, we will be still trapped in our prejudice. So you will see ourselves like Yashoda initially, before she become Arahant, she would see Buddha, would have still strong, not sort of attraction towards Buddha, which initially be with trouble, but later on, of course, when she relinquishes her desire, and of course, things would be different. But it's understandable because of the past relationship. Okay, so that's all, I think. And next week next sitting we can talk about this dwelling in happiness. There's not much in there. All right, so for the next session, please try to read certainly dwelling in happiness, 14, chapter 13, chapter 14, lifespan of Tathagata. Yeah, at least 15, up till 15 chapter 15. And if you can do chapter 16, good that. Depending on the content. If they don't have much content, I think we can move a little quickly, because there's still a fair bit. Chapter 27. Oh. All right. Okay. I think we can stop sharing this. Thank you. Any last questions?
So I would just confirm there that the next meeting will be on October the 17th, if that's suitable for everyone.
Sure. Okay. October the 17th.
Mhm.
I will check on your on Chakran channel to confirm the dates.
Yeah,
October
we will
17th.
be doing. Mhm. Mm.
Oh, I just didn't realize. I thought I was speaking through the mic, but apparently I wasn't. Just realized it.
It was
That is
fine.
Sunday.
Hmm?
The 17th is a Sunday.
Sorry, I mean 16. I do apologize. I meant 16. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll make sure that actually that
In
is
between. Yeah.
noted
Sorry.
in my. So you said 16 of
October.
Saturday, the 16th of October.
Yep, sure. 1 minute. Okay.
But we'll be in touch within the month anyway, if anything changes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sonam.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Okay. Any final questions or comments or anything like that? These stories are quite fun, actually. I think they are very good. Actually, so much of interest among modern academics and even researchers on these stories. And now I have one PhD student. She is doing, of course, on Chinese Buddhism along those topics, and the struggle that female monastics in China had to face from the beginning until Cultural Revolution, because especially during Cultural Revolution, there is so little that people know about the impact of Cultural Revolution on female congregation, female monastics. I suppose in Tibet, I'm not sure if they actually explore this specifically. Of course, Cultural Revolution has a massive impact on Tibetan Buddhism, certainly in general. Laicizing both male as well as female monastics. but China, and not only that, other countries who went through similar phases would have the similar issues. Yeah, so the perennial issue is what is the state of at play during the time of Buddha? What is the equality? Did Buddha treat both males and female sangha equally? Was Buddha a male chauvinist? There are certain, there are certain texts that you can produce. Of course, you can't straight away attribute those texts that to the Buddha straight away, because most of the texts, those texts were not written during the time of Buddha, because texts were written at least after 300 years after the Buddha. But still, people do attribute those various texts. Even this one, Lotus Sutra, I can't imagine that Buddha Buddha said this whole thing. But nevertheless, from my point of view, yes, these are authentic words of Buddha. Okay, no comments, no questions. All right, so into brief dedication. Start again. Again, concentrating on your breath. When you do meditation on loving kindness, before doing that, if you have any tension inside, unease, discomfort, you can breathe them out. So when you breathe out, you can visualize all the negativities from you coming out. And do that until you feel at ease, comfortable. Start with appreciative joy or a joyous appreciation. Appreciating, admiring the opportunity you have. Very fortunate for being so healthy, for having all the facilities to discuss, to enter in Dharma talks, to think wholesome thought. Fortunate not to be tormented by hunger, starvation, cold, war, famine, even diseases. And fortunate to be able to think about these deep subjects. About full awakening, the possibility of developing ourselves, nurturing ourselves, so that we can realize our ultimate goal, ultimate beatitude. Good for ourselves, good for others. Once you feel good about yourself, then try to share your goodwill for others as well. Your loved ones, starting with your loved ones. Think about them. May also, my loved one also have good times. May they flourish in their lives. May they succeed their quest. May they get time to think about these deep issues, practice, and develop their full potential so that they can overcome suffering. The suffering of anger, suffering of depression, fear, insomnia, physical sufferings, mental sufferings. Then you can think about your colleagues, your workmates, your neighbor, and spread the web of your goodwill wider and wider throughout. Breaking all the barriers. May everyone be free from suffering. May everyone be kind to each other. Speak lovingly to each other. Speak gently to each other. May I be able to do the same thing. May they gain strength to overcome, strength to free themselves from fear, from aggression. May I be able to facilitate in any way I can for the good of others. And then you can think about, finally, you can think about the person who treated you badly, or abused you badly. Look at this person's face, not out of hatred, not out of bitterness, just at the face, with calm and quiet mind, compassionate mind. Forgiving this person from the very deep, letting go of your bitterness, hatred, or anger, resentment. Think this person just like yourself. Unknowingly harms you, or harming himself or herself. So forgive this person. May you be free from anger, depression. May I be free from anger, aggression. May I be able to work hard to free myself from these inner forces that deprives my happiness. And may you also get the strength, get the technique, get Dharma, so that you can be victorious for your own good, for the good of others. Life is send a good vibration of love, kindness, starting from your good loved ones, gradually to everyone, including the one you have cross relationship. Reminding ourselves the message of the Buddha, Devdatta being his noble, benevolent friend, Kalyan Mitra. May we grow in Dhamma. May we grow deep in Dhamma. Find your own path in Dhamma, so that you become steadfastly independent, your own light in yourself, depending nothing but your own intelligence, your own moral integrity, becoming island upon yourself, refuge unto oneself. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Sonam, once again.
Thank you, Sonam, for your time.
Thank you, Sonam. Thank you.
And thanks, Lindy.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you for patient listening.
Oh,
very enjoyable. Wonderful to use for the month.
yes.
About for the month, yeah. Very much appreciated, Sonam, and appreciate everyone joining this morning. Thank you. Lovely to see you all.
Ajana, thank you.
Tujiche.
Tuji
Thank you so.
Ajana.
Kadiche. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
See you
Yeah.
again soon.
Bye.
Take
See you
care.
next time.
Wow.
Thank you, Sonam.